Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Lou Dobbs Tonight. For those joining us for the first time this evening, this is our debut of Lou Dobbs Tonight on Frank's Speech and Lindell TV, and also our return for many of you who've been loyal viewers over the years, in some cases for decades. And now we resume our conversation that was unexpectedly and, in my opinion, somewhat rudely interrupted some 3 years ago. But that was then, and this is now. So let's see where we are. This can't be. That's right. We're still talking about a rigged election, a stolen election, just as we were 3 years ago. And almost nothing about the 2020 election has changed. There have been no meaningful investigations of the election irregularities, the many anomalies, and outright fraud. An election that was decided in 3 states by a margin of fewer than 50,000 votes in those 3 states. Think of it. 50,000 votes out of more than 150 million votes cast in that election. And no investigations, no concern, just nothing to see here. Please keep moving on by. And the U.S. Supreme Court, state Supreme Courts, avoided their eyes from the claims, the evidence, the complaints, as did election officials, state legislatures, and governors in almost half the states in the Union. There have been a few studies of voting machines since 2020, but a federal judge sealed the most important of those studies for 2 years. And when opened, that study revealed vulnerability to manipulation, but no conclusion about whether those vulnerabilities had been exploited. Remember, former Attorney General Bill Barr, he said a few weeks after the election that he had seen no evidence of voter fraud whatsoever. Well, that's because the FBI and the Department of Justice, it turns out, never investigated the 2020 election. Later, Attorney General Barr did acknowledge he knew that Joe Biden was a liar when he was on the stage of the second presidential debate in 2020. He declared the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. But Barr refused to tell the news media and the American people because he said he didn't want to intervene in the election. Incredible reasoning, don't you think? And he intervened on the behalf of Joe Biden by saying nothing. And that wasn't an accident, was it? And doing nothing whatsoever. And there are, of course, the lying 51 intelligence agency veterans who signed a letter saying Hunter's laptop was Russian disinformation when those intelligence veterans, including 5 heads of the CIA, knew that it wasn't. But former CIA head Mike Morrell, who recruited all 51 of those intelligence veterans who signed that letter, was straightforward about it. Morrell said he did it to help Joe Biden win the presidency. And indeed he did. And here we are, 3 years later now, no consequence, no accountability, of course. And here we go again. It is election year 2024 now underway, a week until the Iowa caucus, the New Hampshire primary in just about 2 weeks. President Trump leading in all the polls, and I mean leading, primary and national, leading by huge margins that will only grow as Governor DeSantis continues to fade, and Nikki Haley's gaffes and unpleasant truths promise to be her undoing, and a likely second victim of that misplaced and poorly reasoned enthusiasm on the part of Republican establishment donors. Those Republican donors, by the way, as in 2020, are stubbornly anti-Trump still, and Republican Party leadership still stubbornly weak and passive and unwilling to follow President Trump as both the leader, the titular head, and ideological leader of the Republican Party, and whose bond with working men and women in this country, the middle class, all those who aspire to it, is, if anything, stronger than ever, because President Trump's record of leadership validates among the voters his role as the Republican Party's leader. There is no doubt about where President Trump stands. His slogans are, in fact, his agenda. his goals, and his promises. Promises that he kept in his first term, goals that he achieved in his first term. Not only his supporters, but all Americans know the promises President Trump made, he kept. And for the same reasons. The Marxist Dems fear Donald Trump. He keeps those promises he makes, and they fear, and yes, they hate him because he is above all else rational and honest. It offends him to see our bloated federal government that is devouring hard-earned taxpayer wages and money and pouring it into dysfunctional, wasteful government programs, and of course, Ukraine. Trump was the first president with the judgment and the courage to insist that our allies in NATO start paying their own way, not depend on the United States to be the world's policeman at the expense of the American taxpayer. That the United States adopt a measured foreign policy, and to end the era of endless wars. Wars that ended poorly, whether in Vietnam or Iraq or adventures in the Middle East. And he had the audacity to criticize those intelligence agencies whose vast budgets are grotesquely swollen, and the return in intelligence has been for years now pitifully and painfully inadequate. And the intelligence agencies, already out of control, took President Trump's threats to heart, and the liberal-led agencies went to work to undercut President Trump and his policies. They not only conspired against him throughout his administration in all 4 years, they tried to overthrow his presidency. That was what it was all about. Conjuring up a special counsel investigation because he dared to fire a politically corrupt FBI director, James Comey. And they were in league with the Clinton campaign trying to frame him as a president who colluded with the Russians. They succeeded in framing as National Security Director General Michael Flynn, but even the corrupt Justice Department and FBI couldn't manufacture enough phony evidence to support any finding whatsoever of the nonsensical, baseless charges that the Department of Justice and FBI and the Marxist Dems still peddle to this very day. And then they impeached him over a phone call with Ukraine's President Zelensky against all lies, all manufactured by the Marxist Dems and the Democrat Party that the Marxists own, and year after year, another impeachment, and now 4 federal indictments, prosecutions in New York State, Georgia, and all for the same purpose, to deny President Trump a second presidency. And the political persecution of Donald Trump is now entering, incredibly, its 9th year. Think about that. The Marxist Dems, the deep state, have been attacking, subverting, and trying to destroy President Trump for 9 years. And now this year, this election year, presents President Trump with the opportunity to prevail again against the awesome power of a federal government that is controlled by the permanent bureaucracy, the deep state, answerable not to Congress, to no one, really, a Marxist Democrat Party, and this corrupt Biden regime who mean to destroy Trump and our constitutional republic and our American way of life. And that is the context for tonight's interview with a man who achieved much in his first term, fighting those within his own party who didn't share his heartfelt respect and affection for working men and women, small business people, and our middle class. He was opposed throughout by his own government, the Justice Department, the FBI, the intelligence agencies, the entire bureaucracy, and the Marxist Democrat Party itself. Our guest is the 45th President of the United States, President Donald Trump. We talked at his home in Mar-a-Lago in South Florida, West Palm Beach.
Mr. President, it's great to see you, and we're now in the 8th year of the political persecution of President Donald J. Trump. You are taking incoming every day from the legal system, the Marxist Dems. Give us a sense of how you feel right now and what your sense is of this country that will permit such an outrage.
So I don't think there's ever been a time like this. I think we're very close to being at the end of our country as we knew it, a great country. It's Marxist, it's fascist, it's communist. It's what they're doing is incredible. What they've done with weaponization of DOJ, FBI, and others, all sort of reporting up. If it's a local DA or a attorney general, a state attorney general, I think it's a very dangerous time. The hope is 2024, because if we win, we're going to get that straightened out so fast. Because it's all people. It's the people from the top. It's a very dangerous time for our country. I really believe that. Then we have the wall where millions and millions of people are pouring into our country. We have the most incompetent president we've ever had, has no idea what's going on in the world, has no respect from the world. And numerous countries are coming up with nuclear weapons, which is the real global warming threat. Not the ocean will rise over the next 400 years by an eighth of an inch. And I think the country's in trouble. I think it's the most dangerous time in the history of our country. And a lot of that is weaponization, but a lot of that is nuclear weapons. I think that we were respected with me. We had tremendous control of things. Iran was behaving because they didn't have the money. Now they have tremendous money. I mean, they were broke. Now they have tremendous money. They've gained in the last 3 years hundreds of billions of dollars of wealth. I told China that if you buy, you're not going to do business with the United States. I told India, I told a lot, if you buy, you do no business with the United States. And we were dealing with Iran, and it was fine. It was actually very good. If you remember, there was no money going to Hamas. There was no money going to Hezbollah. There were stories about it because they didn't have any money. Now they have billions and billions of dollars, probably 127 billion, not including the $6 billion that you read about for the hostage swap. Another great deal, $6 billion for the hostages. So I think the country is in the greatest danger it's ever been. And to a large extent, a big portion of that would be because we have a leader that doesn't know what to do.
You know, you say that this president is weak. You say that he is the issue. And so many people in the national left-wing corporate media are talking about why the rest of the world does not respect him. There is no policy that he has offered up that I perceive, at least, as being pro-America. The policies are Marxist in nearly every respect, whether it has to do with the American family, whether it has to do with sovereignty, border security, illegal immigration, foreign policy. You had created a modest foreign policy, bringing home our troops. Yep. Withdrawing troops from foreign lands, and about 100 of them, we have troops now. How does that make you feel to see that reversal of your policies that were creating such a great response on the part of the global nations?
So I was bringing them home, but also bringing them home from countries that don't even like us. Right. We're protecting countries that took advantage of us and hate us in many cases. When you look at Afghanistan, the withdrawal, that was a big moment because I believe it was the most incompetent and embarrassing time in the history of our country. The way we withdrew, not the withdrawing, because I was withdrawing too, but we were going to do it with great strength and dignity. I believe that the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the way they did it, leaving $85 billion worth of equipment, $85 billion, think of it, behind. The best equipment in the world, leaving it behind. You know, I don't know if you know this, that the Taliban in Afghanistan now is one of the top 3 traders in military equipment. They're selling, because they don't need 700,000 guns and rifles. They don't need 70,000 vehicles, many of them armor plated. They don't need tanks and all of the things that we left. We left behind $85 billion worth of equipment, the best military equipment in the world. But most importantly, 13 soldiers dead, 38 soldiers horribly wounded, and hundreds of people killed. And it should have been nothing. And we took the soldiers out. We took our military out before we took our American hostages out. You have people over there. You have still hundreds of Americans over there haven't been able to get out. We should have taken everything out, and then you take your money. You could ask a child, when would you take the military out? 5 years old, he'd say, you take the military out last. We took the military out first. So we were going to get out with dignity and strength, and we lost Bagram. Bagram was one of the biggest airfields in the world. And most importantly, not because of Afghanistan, but because of China. It's 1 hour away from where China makes their nuclear weapons. And to have that would have been incredible. I was never leaving there. We were going to keep that. And they fled Bagram. They really surrendered. The whole thing was just like, I think it was the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And Putin would have never gone into Ukraine anyway. But when he saw that, he said, this is the time to move because these people are incompetent. And as you know, President Xi's talking about Taiwan, and lots of things we're not respected at all. And 3 years ago, we were greatly respected. And 3 years ago, we were energy independent. And you had gasoline selling for less than $2. And now you have it at $5, $6, $7, and even $8 a gallon. And it's what's happened to our country. And truly one of the worst things is when you have millions and millions. I know this, I've been your friend and I've been your watcher. I would watch you all the time, and I still do it whenever I can. But I know you very well. It must just drive you crazy when you see millions of people coming into our country and totally unchecked, from jails, from mental institutions, terrorists. We're going to be paying a big price. We're going to do big deportation, by the way, which will make you feel slightly better. But they're coming in from the prisons all over the world. This isn't just in South America, all over Africa, in the Congo. The other day, people released from prisons in the Congo. In fact, some of these people make our prisoners look like very nice people. We have people in our country now that shouldn't be in our country. Millions of people are walking, just walking through our country. Right now, as we speak, they have the largest caravan of people, a name I came up with. And we stopped the caravans pretty quickly. But they have the largest caravan anyone's seen. And it's pouring in through Mexico, heading up to our country.
10 million, an estimated 10 million illegal immigrants just since Joe Biden took the Oval Office. That is extraordinary by any measure. Yet there is no discussion amongst the business elites, the global business elites, no discussion from social critics in academia, our universities and colleges, nor our trading partners and military allies. It is an extraordinary development that no one could have imagined an American president inviting, which is exactly what this president has done.
He did. Oh, he did. He said, come on. At the beginning. So I said, don't come up because you're not getting through. And people wouldn't come up. They say, and I built a wall. I built 561 miles of wall, which is a big thing. You know, they said, oh, it's 50. Well, it's not 50 by any. But they say, oh, it's 50. Like this dope Chris Christie said, oh, it's 50 miles. No, it's way over 500. It's 561. And we had another 200 ready to go. We actually built it. And all we had to do is install it. Could have been up in about 3 weeks. And they wouldn't put it up. That's when I realized they actually wanted open borders. But the wall was great. And we also had Mexico paying for their soldiers. You know, we had 28,000 Mexican soldiers on our border. And they paid for it free of charge. It was a nice gift, but not easy to get. I had to say things that, you know, you don't want to really say, like we're going to tariff your product if you don't put them there. So we had the best numbers we've ever had. And now we have the worst numbers I think that any country's ever had. I don't think any country's ever had numbers like this. I don't care if it's third world or not. We have the worst numbers we've ever had. 3 years ago, we had the best numbers we've ever had. And that included not only people coming in, it included drugs, human trafficking. We had the best numbers at everything, almost every category that we've ever had. And now we have the worst numbers.
The worst numbers, and the numbers don't even express the dire circumstances that this country faces. Fentanyl, 100,000 deaths a year. Child trafficking. The Health and Human Services can't track over 80,000 children that have crossed that border. China is a partner with Mexico and their drug cartels, and they are responsible for fentanyl and opiates coming from Mexico.
They make most of it.
And this president, on Wednesday, will be talking with Xi Jinping about a new relationship with a power that is expansionary, that is threatening the United States almost every month. Your reaction?
Well, the other thing is, remember that until I get indicted, I've been indicted more than Al Capone over complaining about a rigged election, over things that nobody can even believe. You read even these legal scholars, they can't even believe. So they've weaponized the DOJ. But remember this, Biden got money from China. He got money from Ukraine. They got money from many of these countries. But he got millions of dollars from China. And that's what they found. Now, if they find that, and it seems very conclusive, obviously, but if they find that, how much money didn't they find? Because it's not easy to find. And I think they have him over a barrel, frankly, because nobody can be so weak with China. What they're doing, you know, I took in billions, hundreds of billions of dollars from China, hundreds of billions of dollars. I gave our farmers $28 billion because, excuse me the language, but they were screwed by China for many years. And I went to Sonny Perdue, Secretary of Agriculture. How much is it? They said $28 billion. I took it out of the tariffs. I gave it to the farmers. But I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. No president ever took in 10 cents. It was a one-way deal. And I changed things around a lot. A lot of people think that's why we had the China virus, frankly, because they never had a problem like they did with me. But I don't think so. I think it was gross incompetence at the Wuhan lab. That's what I think. I really don't believe. You know, there are those people that said they would have done anything to get rid of me. I actually had a very good relationship with President Xi, but once the China virus or COVID came along, it was a lot different. But it's so sad to see what's happened to our country in a short period of time. Inflation at a level that we haven't seen in 70 years. You look at what's going on with energy. You look at the lack of respect they have for us, but you just take a look at the lack of respect. The way China talks about our country now, they would never have said that with me. In fact, they had a policy 24 or 25, I guess it was 2025. And I said, you know, I'd appreciate it if you take that down because that's very insulting. In other words, that was going to be when they really take over everything economically. You heard that, right? China 2025. And I said to President Xi, you know, it's a very insulting statement because you're really saying you're going to take over in 2025. And I know you're going to try, but we're going to try to have us keep the lead. And he took everything down, but now I see they're using, everything was taken out. It was all gone. One conversation was all gone. You know, it's pretty sad to see.
You shut down the Trans-Pacific Partnership involving all of the Pacific powers and Indochina as well, not China. And you've been roundly criticized over the course of the past year for that, which is a drumbeat by the Biden administration and its supporters in corporate America, trying to restore a TPP. And what's your reaction to that after you had killed the original, which would, in the minds of most, would have been devastating?
It was a disaster for our country. We would have no automobile business left. You know, we lost about 50% of our auto manufacturing between Canada, Mexico, China, all over the place. If you look at Mexico, the number of automobiles they make, it's incredible. The factories, the size of the buildings they're building to make cars, not during my term, but they came in and they just decimated our auto business and the manufacturing. That's why the auto workers, how could they ever vote for this guy? And this guy was a part of it. What other countries have done to us, and now with this all-electric mandate, all of those cars are going to be made in China. They're not going to be made here. They're going to be made in China. The all-electric car, they don't go far and they cost too much. You know, it's very simple. Somebody said, well, should we make it more complex? You don't have to. They don't go far and they cost too much. If you want to take a very short trip, it's nice. But if you want to go like beyond the state line without having to get it charged for 2.5 hours, it's so crazy what they're doing. They're destroying our country.
They're destroying the country. I think a lot of people have that sense. I know about half the population has that sense.
Yeah.
And there are people in this country, a lot of people, good, strong, healthy families that are fighting against these policies and their effects on middle America. You were the president who made the Republican Party the party of the working man and woman in this country, the American family. Give us your sense of what you will do to restore primacy to the forgotten men and women of this country who right now are fighting for their economic and their real survival.
So let me just say one thing that happened. So the Keystone XL pipeline, it was being built. It was moving along. It was a massive project going all the way down to the Gulf. It was a great project. 48,000 workers. He came in the first day he ended it. And by the way, the head of that union, the pipeline union, they have people that build pipelines have a union. The head of it endorsed Biden. Now the workers, I guarantee, they mostly voted for me, but they endorsed. And then as soon as he comes in, he got rid of all those jobs and all of the importance of that pipeline. It was such an important thing, but that's just one of so many different things. So what we'll be doing is we'll be drilling, we'll be reducing energy. That'll bring down inflation. That'll bring down interest rates. If you want to buy a home today, you're middle income and you want to go out to a bank, the banks, number one, don't have money. And if they do have money, they're loaning it at 9 and 10 and 11% or not loaning it really at all. We have an economy that's incredible. We have an economy that's so fragile. And the only reason it's running now is it's running off the fumes of what we did, what the Trump administration. It's just running off the fumes. And when there's a crash, I hope it's going to be during this next 12 months. Because I don't want to be Herbert Hoover. The one president, I just don't want to be Herbert Hoover. But what they've done is incredible. What they're doing with all of this money, the trillions and trillions of dollars of waste. This Green New Deal is, the Green New Deal will destroy our country. And I'm an environmentalist more than they are. But when you see the kind of monies that they're throwing around on building infrastructure that's no good, but environmentally friendly, on doing windmills all over the place that are the most expensive energy in the world. You cannot get more expensive. And now you notice it's all coming down because they're not working. It's not working. Economically, it doesn't work. It's 20 times more expensive than what we have under our feet, liquid gold. I call it liquid gold. We have more than any other country. And we'll be using it, and we'll be selling it to Europe, and we'll be doing a lot of things with it. We were going to sell massive amounts of oil and gas to Europe. They wouldn't have even needed the pipeline. It wouldn't have been able to compete with us. And we were going to make a fortune. We were going to start paying down debt. We owe $34 trillion. We were going to start paying down debt. Everything was going great. In fact, I was all set to do that, and then we got hit with COVID. We had to worry about that. And we did a great job with that, but we never got the credit for that one. I got a credit for a great economy. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I got credit for that, but never for the job. This dust came in from China. But even they tried, to this day, they try and say it wasn't China, but it was China. It was the Wuhan labs, which I said right from the beginning. But we were going to pay down debt. We were going to reduce taxes further. We gave the largest tax cut in history. And we were going to pay down debt further. And we were doing a great job. And then we had a very unfortunate election. Now, I know who you're involved with, so I can say it here. But sometimes they say you'll cut it out. So, why? What's the purpose? But we had a rigged election.
We don't cut anything out.
No, you don't. That's what I'm saying. That's why I say it with you. We had a rigged election. It was rigged, 100% rigged. And the question I get most is, number one, how do you take it? And I take it, I guess, because genetically I take it. I think I also take it because we're doing so well. We're leading everybody by so much. So that helps. But the other question I get the most, probably number two, maybe number one sometimes, is how do we stop them from cheating? People ask me, will they do it again, sir? Because, I'm in Florida now, and I drive to various locations and airports and places. Every house has a Trump sign on it. Trump 2024. We got all the votes we need. The risk is what's going to happen during election period. It used to be election day or election night. They'd say election night. But today you don't have that. You have 60 days, 40 days, 30 days. You have some states where they have 8 days to count the vote after the election is over. How do you have an election when you have to count the vote for? And, the machines are supposed to speed up the process, right? We ought to go to all paper. All paper. They have now watermark paper. It's incredible what you can do with paper. Right. but we go all paper, same day voting, and voter ID, a little thing like voter ID. The Democrats are violently against voter ID because it will make it very hard for them to cheat. Can you imagine somebody saying, we don't want voter ID? You know.
Well, I know who does, and those are the Democrats, and they do for the very reason you're intimating.
Yeah.
They cheated in 2020. They cheated in 2022. Those are statements of fact. They're not. Somebody can dispute them, but the facts are straightforward. And one of the things that I've always found interesting is no one wants to say to you, relitigate 2020. The fact is, if this country doesn't come to its senses about how deceitful and crooked these elections are, and I'm talking about from the local to the presidential offices, we're going to have real problems. What I don't see from the Republican Party is a response. I don't see Ronna McDaniel and the NRC.
I agree with you.
Going after it. What would you like to see here? I know you've got more than a full plate. You're being assailed from every quarter. But what would you like to see the Republican Party, for which you are the titular head, do?
So when I won in 2016, I won. I went home and I watched. I did my thing. I did 7 rallies on the final day, maybe 7 rallies on the 2 final days, 7 and 7, and not a lot of people can do that. And they were full, big, beautiful rallies. Started in Florida, ended up in Iowa. One was 82 degrees, one was 3 degrees below zero. It's called pneumonia weather, right? That's beautiful because you go from that difference. But we did a great thing. And I went home and I watched the election, and I won the election. I never thought I'd have to watch votes. You know, that's supposed to be done by states, really, for the federal government, but it's supposed to be done by states, and we're supposed to have people watching it within the party. And they said they'll never let that happen again. And I was hearing those statements. I said, that's a weird statement, right? And they cheated. And they cheated at every different level in many different ways. And we have it all documented. We have so much documented, it's not even if you didn't want to get into the fact, like 2,000 Mules, where they, you have them on camera stuffing the ballot boxes. Okay, how much? And they're all federal cameras, This is all federal. And many of the cameras were missing. But they have hundreds of thousands of votes even at that. But don't even get into that. Don't get in when you see workers stuffing boxes with cameras, federal cameras. Go into the 51 intelligence agents where they said the laptop from hell, which exposed tremendous crime, was Russian disinformation. They all knew it was, and it was cheating. That was cheating. Go into all of the different legislatures where they didn't get approval to do all the stuff that they did. They had to get it from the legislatures, and they didn't. If you look at Wisconsin now, Wisconsin has essentially admitted that I won. I won the election up there. But they have a clause somewhere in some document, but you can't do anything after 30 days. It's really, think of it, it's sick. They catch you cheating on the election, you're not able to do anything if you don't catch them in time. The Republicans do not fight the same way. They don't fight dirty, and I don't say anybody should fight dirty, but you got to fight smart. And they seem not to, we have guys like Mitch McConnell, it's just like, it's hopeless. But we have great people now watching. And I tell them, I said, don't help me during the next period of time. Don't help me at all during the next year. I get all the votes. We're getting more votes than you need. Just watch that election period. Secure the vote, really, because they don't secure the vote. Right. And if they don't secure the vote, bad things can happen. Now, we have some very good people, because now I'm involved in that. Who thought you would have had to be involved? I thought I'd campaign. I go home and I see what happens. But I campaigned, I went home, and then all of a sudden I see it looks like Pennsylvania is going to be ours by a lot. And then at 3:02 or whatever it was in the morning, all of a sudden they're finding all sorts of stuff. And look what's happened to our country because of it. It's a different country. This is a different country than it was 3 years ago. It's a country that's no longer respected. It's a country that our energy is a disaster. Think of it, we have more than anybody else, and we are paying the highest prices. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Our energy, if we bring that down to where it should be, will reduce inflation. You have to get it back. Where they say, well, we're only at 4% now, but it's 4% over the biggest increase in history. So people are being absolutely killed. It's very interesting. If you go back and study inflation, inflation is a country buster. You can go back years ago, many years ago, in Germany, where they had big inflation, destroyed the country. It destroys countries. And it, along with many other things, are destroying this country. But we have so many things. The border, millions and millions of people coming in. You can go, there's not one thing in this country now that works, that's good. I mean, you can't say, well, he's good at this or he's good at that. Everything is bad. The inflation is horrible. Everything is bad. There's nothing that you can say, well, except he did a great job here. He didn't do a great job in anything. You go through the 10 or 12 major things, every one of them is a disaster. And we have to change it, or we're not going to have a country left.
Much of the country, I think more than half of the country, certainly wants you to be the president elected in 2024. How confident are you that you can win and overcome all that you must? Indictments, the full array of the federal government against you, whether it's the federal get out the vote executive action taken by President Biden 3 months after he was in office. He meant to weaponize the government from the very beginning. And you've got a party that is right now working against itself, whether it's in the House of Representatives, whether it is a number of lesser known personalities, I'll put it that way.
Well, even having
they should
debates,
be the nominee.
Lou, even having debates, I'm up 64 points, and they're having debates, and they hit me at the debates, although mostly they're hitting each other. But the party should be unified. The party shouldn't be having debates. You know, you have a 64-point lead. The weaponization is interesting because the people get it. And, you know, I have a big platform. I can talk to people like you. I can talk to others. And when you explain it, they understand it. My numbers have gone up. I don't think my numbers would be anywhere near. Who would think this is possible? Think of it. You get indicted on ridiculous stuff, along with other people that were very decent people. You see some of the people, these are high quality, wonderful people. They've been, you know, they want to destroy these people. But you get indicted, you explain it to the public, and your vote goes up. That's never happened before. If you get indicted, normally you go to the microphone, you announce you're retiring, you want to spend more time with your family. You know, it's the standard phrases that they use, and you want to clear your name. My numbers have gone through the roof because people see it's a hoax. Just like Russia was a hoax. You were the first one to see that. You and a small group of people knew the Russia thing was a hoax. And if we had a strong attorney general instead of a man that was petrified, he would have done something about it. Maybe you can still do something about it. You know, you do have a 6-year statute of limitations. But Barr was a coward. He didn't have the courage to do what he should have done. When they said they were going to impeach him, he became a marshmallow, a big marshmallow. And he became weak. He was petrified. He didn't want to be impeached. I said, I got impeached twice and my numbers went up. You remember that? I got impeached twice and my numbers went up. So I'm a little inverse from people. But he was petrified of doing it. Now, how don't your numbers and how don't you get in trouble with the other party, which say what you want about them. They could keep their Congress nice and easy. They always got 100%. Did you ever see a negative vote? They always got 100%. So they could impeach me. And I had 100% of the Republican Party, but they had a slight majority, right, in the House. So Nancy Pelosi, who's a crazy, horrible person, actually, she impeached me over nothing. She impeached me where I was right, because if you look at the Ukraine thing, I turned out to be right. The laptop says, in fact, when they saw the laptop, they said the laptop proved that Trump was 100% right. That should have never been indicted. The other should have never been. So they indicted me 4 times. Al Capone was only indicted. Al Capone was the greatest of them all in terms of the gangsters, right? Scarface. He was indicted once. I was indicted 4 times. But the good news, it's over nothing. I call them the Biden indictments. What they've done is they go after their political opponent. That's a precedent. It's like the precedent of giving $6 billion to Iran for releasing 5 people. And that's a bad precedent because now all of a sudden you can see a lot of people missing. I never paid anything. You know, we got out 58 hostages. I never paid 10 cents, never. Because once you pay, the precedent's bad. The precedent on doing what they did with the with using the weaponization, using the DOJ, the FBI to go after the political opponent, that is so bad. Because that means that I can do it too. In other words, the Pandora's box is open. And that means that I can do it too. And I don't want to do it. But they've opened something that's never been opened in this country. It's been opened and done in third world countries pretty effectively, but it's never, or banana republics, but it's never been done in this country. And certainly never like this. And the people get it. We have to win in 2024. If we don't win in 2024, we have not got a country anymore. I really believe that. I know you believe it. I know you believe it probably even more strongly than me. But if we don't win, this is the most important election we've ever had. I used to go around saying 2016 was the most important, and it was. At the time, I thought it was the most important because we were heading in the wrong direction. And it was important, but nothing compared to what we have now. If we don't win this election, I really believe this country is done.
I think millions and millions of Americans agree with you. And as you correctly said, I believe exactly that myself. I'd like to close on an optimistic note. And if you would, give us a sense of what you would do in terms of ending the hostilities, the war between Ukraine and Russia, what you would do to support Israel, to make certain that they don't have to live with terror every minute of every day of their existence.
I have to say, before I even start to give you that answer, which is very doable, by the way, but it was a lot better in the old days when I was there because it would have never happened. Ukraine would have never been invaded, and Russia would not have done that. And Putin and I had a very good relationship, and I have with Zelensky a very good relationship. But you remember he was the one that said they're crazy when they said, did he threaten you? You know, he actually said, no, he could have done a grandstand and said, well, I felt threatened. He didn't do that. So I respect him. You understand that? But I have a relationship with both. And I say I will have that settled before I take office. If I win as president-elect, I will get that bloodbath settled. And the numbers are much bigger. You know, the number of people that are dying, when you see those buildings coming down all over the place, there are a lot of people in those buildings, and then you hear 2 people were injured. 2 people were sent to the hospital with minor injuries, and they dropped these massive buildings. I'll get Ukraine settled. Israel, something is going to happen. I think probably by the time we get to office, something either very negative or positive, but I think negative because we don't have a leader. This should have never happened. They would have never attacked Israel. That horrible attack, which was a horrible attack. And the amazing thing is that people don't talk about the attack anymore. They don't talk about that. They only talk about the other side. And something has to be done very quickly. The problem with that one is that some really bad things can happen fairly quickly. And that includes other nations getting involved that are pretty big nations with millions of soldiers. And they talk about it openly. They talk about it openly because they have no respect for the United States anymore. They have no respect for the leader of the United States. And it's a big problem. But if I get in, and I hope I do, because I love our country, and I never like to say, I will win, because I think that's foolish to say. I think we have a great chance. We have to keep their cheating down to a minimum. You can't stop them totally, but we have to keep it down to a minimum. And one of the best ways is we have to swamp them, to use a term, the opposite meaning. We have to swamp them. You have drained the swamp and then swamping them. But we have to swamp them because there comes a point where they can't, where it's just too big to cheat. But they will go as high as they can. These are people that, if you think about it, if you have open borders, if you have high gasoline prices, high interest rates, you can't buy a home, the school system stinks, everything is bad. How do you win an election? There's only one way, you have to cheat. They cheat. And they've done it for years, but nobody ever saw anything like it in 2020. And you can't let that go. People, they use the term election denier. I'm an election denier. I'm an absolute election denier. I wish I didn't have to do that because we should have won that election. But you look at it, and the people, you have to learn from history. So people forgot that. What they did in Atlanta was a terrible thing. You know, they never go after the people that cheated. They only go after the people that are looking at the people that cheated because they don't want the answers, and they know the answers. I'm going to be releasing something having to do with Georgia very soon. I don't know what's foolproof, what's not, but it's pretty foolproof. It's massive theft, massive theft. I'm going to be releasing things on other states. I view this as an opportunity. A lot of people would say, well, it's a lot of big stuff. But when you look at even now, let's go to a slightly different subject, but it's all corrupt. We have a very corrupt country. January 6th, what's happened to those people is not believable. What's happened to them? Policemen, firemen, lawyers, military people. What's happened? And yet nothing happens on the other side. I was watching the other day as a fence was being destroyed at the White House and painted over. I built that fence. You know, it's a titanium fence. It's an incredible job we did because the other was no longer capable of doing the job that you may have to have. And when I watched the horror that they were doing to the White House with the spray paint all over the place and horrible. Nothing's going to happen to those people. Nothing will happen to them. But you go to J6 and you see a little thing came out a couple of months ago that they have destroyed all the evidence. You know that? They've destroyed. They've taken that hearing, which was a total sham, with all Democrats and 2 Republicans that were far worse than any Democrat that ever lived, okay? Two very sick Republicans. I mean, Liz Cheney's a sick person. I was responsible for her defeat in her state where she couldn't be beaten. And by the time we finished, she got the lowest vote in the history of politics for a sitting congressman losing. Because most of them, when they're that low, they just resign before they go through an election. But when you see what they did, they got rid of all of the stuff and they announced it. We have deleted and essentially thrown out. They threw out everything, almost everything. I guess maybe they saved a couple of good things for them. They threw out all the statements about Nancy Pelosi and not wanting the soldiers. If she would have done that, you wouldn't have had a J6. They threw out all of the statements made by the police chief about Nancy Pelosi and about others. And then I believe he died. But you had others that said a lot of bad things. It was a lot of bad things. How about me grabbing a Secret Service agent who's young and very strong, being slightly rebuffed, and I go to the one on the other side of the car, and I grabbed him around the neck. Actually, a lot of people said, I didn't know you were that strong. You know, one of them was like a black belt or something. They said, that was impressive. It's not impressive. Such a lie. You know, I mean, this stuff was made up. They got rid of everything. They got rid of just about all. It was thrown out. So, look, we have a country that's lost its way. We have a failing nation, and we're going to turn it around. We have to win in 2024. We cannot allow anybody else. They don't have the votes. The only way they can win is to cheat. And again, their policies, it's not possible that 30% of the people want to have open borders where criminals are allowed to come into our country and do terrible things to them and everyone else. It's not possible. They have the worst policy. It's not even believable policy, including their environmental stuff, which is going to destroy our country. It's going to destroy our country. And nobody's more important. Nobody loves the environment. I want clean air. I want clean water, crystal clean. I want everything. But if we don't win the election in 2024, I really believe that America is finished. If we do, I think we can bring it back to a level greater than ever before.
President Donald Trump, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And there is President Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, and most Americans, I believe, think that he would make an excellent choice to be the 47th president as well. You saw his strength, his humor, his focus. This is the reason that most people believe that based on his record, his incredible leadership and the bond between him and the Republican base, that he will be that 47th president. We certainly hope so. We hope you do as well. Let's turn now to some of the other big stories of the evening. No one is, of course, above the law, at least ideally in this country, but some certainly sit higher than others at the table of justice. Hunter Biden, for example, he has for very long now seemed untouchable. Despite being corrupt, there are perks that come with being the son of Joe Biden, apparently, but Hunter's luck may be changing. This morning, House Republicans recommended that Hunter Biden be held in contempt of Congress. Republicans say Hunter, quote, violated federal law by refusing to comply with a House subpoena. That move comes after House Republicans launched an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. Republicans want to know now whether Joe Biden used his office to benefit his family's business dealings. Hunter Biden flat out said he would not comply with a congressional subpoena to appear for a closed-door deposition related to that inquiry. Former Trump White House officials Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro tried that, you may recall. They were held in contempt of Congress, charged by the Department of Justice, but Hunter obviously thinks he is special, very special, and he certainly has been. The rules are for rubes, he says, and MAGA reprobates, not the sons, of course, of sitting presidents on high. We don't know what will happen next, but we hope that Hunter Biden is at least getting a taste of the heat his father has heaped on the enemies of his administration and the American people. We hope this is just the beginning, because no one should, of course, be above the law, although some are, and they seem to belong to one particular party. Marxist Dems. Perhaps they would call themselves Democrats, but they're Marxist Dems. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer will join us Thursday this week to give us the very latest on the impeachment inquiry, the contempt of Congress process as it proceeds. You don't want to miss that. Meanwhile, there's a dangerous invasion, as almost everyone but the Biden administration has noticed, at our southern border that is now controlled by the cartels, by the way. The number is 302,000. That the number of illegal immigrants encountered by authorities along the southwest border in December alone. It is the highest monthly total ever, but it could be even higher. Sources tell ABC News that the 302,000 was just a preliminary head count. What is President Joe Biden doing about it? Begging President Andrés Manuel López Obrador for help, perhaps? Yes, that's exactly what he's doing. Biden is ostensibly the leader of the world's most powerful nation, with the world's most powerful military. Yet Biden has decided that he will grovel with a foreign head of state to help him secure America's border, a border that he has left wide open for the cartels for 3 years. That's certainly humiliating for Joe Biden and his administration. In exchange for his help, López Obrador has asked for $20 billion in aid to Latin American and Caribbean countries. He also wants to sweeten the deal. He also wants to have amnesty for at least 10 million illegal immigrants in the United States. Obrador knows Biden is weak, doesn't he? And he is treating him as the weakling he is. It is no wonder Democrats are panicking ahead of the election this year. Immigration will be a key issue. And real clear politics, their polling shows that just 33% of Americans approve of how Joe Biden is handling immigration policy. But Biden obviously can't help himself. And incredibly, at the same time that Biden is begging Mexico's president for help to secure our southern border, he is punishing states like Texas that are trying to secure their border. It's incredible. Biden directed the Justice Department, in fact, to sue the state of Texas if it allows state and local law enforcement to apprehend illegal immigrants. In other words, Biden wants to punish Americans for treating illegal immigration like a crime. Texas's Governor Greg Abbott said in response to President Biden's threat that he has, quote, never seen such hostility to the rule of law in America, end quote. I think none of us have. No president in our lifetime has done more to damage the salience of sovereignty and citizenship than President Biden. That will be part of his legacy, part of the stain on the Biden name, long after he has left the White House. Speaking of danger that is seeping into our society, you've probably heard the saying that if a product is free, you're the product. That is especially true of social media companies. Most of us have acquiesced in some way to that reality. There is no such thing as a free lunch, of course, let alone a free app. We try to inform ourselves about privacy policies. You do what you can, knowing you're being watched throughout when you open one. But how do you feel about your kids being watched, your impressionable sons and daughters? What do you think about social media companies looking at their personal data as a cash opportunity? A new Harvard study found that companies like Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube generated $11 billion in revenue from advertising aimed directly at our children. That includes nearly $2 billion in profits derived from users 12 and under. And keep in mind, that data is not passive. It's used to form habits, leading your kids down the rabbit hole like an Alice in Wonderland. The more a company knows about your kids, the deeper it can draw them in to its feed. They're figuring out which knobs to twist, which buttons to press. This is not a victimless crime. They're turning our children into digital drug users. The authors of the Harvard study wrote, quote, a growing body of research documents associations between social media use, social media advertising, and negative mental health outcomes among our youth, including depression, anxiety, and eating disorders. It's probably not a coincidence that, according to the Centers for Disease Control, youth suicide rates rose 62% from 2007 to 2021. Think of that. More than 60%. The iPhone 1 was released in 2007. We've become the product ever since, and the incentives are entirely against regulations. Cindy Bryn Austin is one of the authors of the Harvard study. She's a professor of social and behavioral sciences at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. She told CBS News, quote, although social media platforms may claim that they can self-regulate their practices to reduce the harm to young people, they have yet to do so. And our study suggests they have overwhelming financial incentives to continue to delay taking meaningful steps to protect children. End quote. Ultimately, no one but parents can take meaningful steps, in my opinion, to protect children. That's easier said than done today. Screens are everywhere. The convenience and entertainment they offer are attractive, but it comes at a price, and your kids pay the highest price. That's our show for tonight. We thank you for being with us. Please tune in tomorrow. Our guest will be Devin Nunes, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, and joining us from his cell in the D.C. Gulag, political hostage of the Marxist Dems, Jake Lang. 7 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. See you then. God bless and good night.
To celebrate the new year, we're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50% and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
Tonight on the Worldview Report, The state of Illinois issued an ultimatum to its gun-owning citizens. Turn over all semi-automatic weapons capable of holding more than 10 rounds by January 1st, or face the consequences of being a felon.